Hi everybody, it's Laura Kingen. Yay, 1:20. I always have to say something about the time because I'm almost always late, so I'm sorry, but Wednesdays about 1 o'clock, 1:15, for about 15 minutes to about 30, 45 minutes. I like to do a presentation for you. I like to pick a topic, present some concepts, go over some safety issues, talk about that concept, and then illustrate that concept by going through either an activity or some kind of activity to illustrate that concept. And then I also like to do, I talked about this in my self-regulation video where I want to start out kind of easy, do a little talking, introduce the concept, we do a physical activity, and then after that physical activity, just do a little calming, quiet time and kind of finish things out. But I like to present the business elements at the beginning of my videos. I have plenty of information on Facebook. I don't have a website. I've never needed a website. And now I'm just trying to formulate some things on Facebook, like this live demo. So in the course of this work, hi Mike, in the course of this work, if you are interested in hiring me as an occupational therapist, whether to do therapy or consultation or an educational seminar or some facsimile thereof, you can certainly reach me through Facebook. My cell number is a Suffolk County area code 631-848-8852. I still have my attachment to New York. I've lived away from New York I've lived away from New York for 35 years and I still have a cell phone number from New York. I had gone back and lived in New York about 20 years ago, and that's when I got my cell phone. And yes, I was actually in New York City during 911. So anyway, let me get back on track here. Let me show you my business card. This is a perceptual task. Those of you that have been watching me know I have my issues with perception as well. Really distorted. There we go. So there's my business card. And those of you that are watching know Carol Green. She was the one that created my logo. I think she's brilliant. So I'm located in Flagstaff, Arizona. I am licensed by the state of Arizona to practice occupational therapy. So within the state bounds, I can work with people. I can evaluate and treat, which means going through and evaluating and then coming up with a treatment plan and then offering treatment to help, as my business card says, I offer strategies to reach wholeness. As an occupational therapist, as a registered OT, I can evaluate. A certified OT assistant only treats. Because there is licensure, state licensure for practicing occupational therapy, there are some restrictions. I can teach and offer general consultation to people outside the state of Arizona. Thusly why I think these live demos and doing other things online can be a more educational forum to share the 35 some odd years of educational experience and work experience that I've gathered over the time. I do actually have a clinic here in Flagstaff, but obviously this year, I opened it in January, but in the meantime, I have developed a telehealth practice. It's encrypted, it's secure, it's their platform for those who are interested in that. So I can do telehealth as well. Obviously, I'm doing these live demos on Facebook, but anything that really gets into some secure or personal issues, I would switch over into my telehealth platform. Let's see. So I am planning on continuing these Wednesday live demos at 1 o'clock. Next week, I would like to talk about visual perception. Today, I'm going to talk about ball handling skills. It's such a generic topic, but it really is addressing more visual motor skills or eye-hand coordination, which is really different than visual perception. To me, visual motor, it's more using your eyes and your hands, or your eyes and your body, your eyes and your foot. It's a very visual motor kind of a process, which is different than visual perception. And visual perception to me is more, where that comes into play is more like, say, for academics. I alluded to this in another video, of taking, say, a symbol like a B. It's the same symbol, but the way you place it, it could look like a P or a D or a Q. And people who have learning disabilities or sensory processing issues can very possibly have visual perceptual issues, which then causes academic problems. And one of the ways to address those issues is by working with an occupational therapist like me. So next week I want to talk about visual perception. But in anticipating today and the ball handling skills and all the different kinds of things that we could do with ball handling skills, I realized that up until now I've been talking more about sensory issues, sensory processing issues, sensory issues related to autism and behavior and that kind of stuff. But what I was really getting as I was preparing for today is starting to take this a step further and talk about behavioral health, mental health, psychiatric kinds of issues. As an occupational therapist, I mean, I graduated OT school in the early mid-'80s. And back then I was required to work at a psychiatric facility for 3 months to learn how it is as an OT to work in the psychiatric arena. And then I subsequently worked at St. Luke's Behavioral Health Center in Phoenix. I was there for 13 years. And I actually had my first business and worked out of that hospital. I had rented my own space and had my sensory integration clinic. Although I'm very careful with the term sensory integration anymore. I worked with a lot of sensory processing issues correlating with behavioral health. And now we have this pandemic issue, and I know that there's a lot of behavioral health issues going on. I mean, I've had my own anxiety, and the different kinds of things I've had to do to address my own anxiety, even at the best of it and working in the field. It's hard, especially with all these unknowns going on and people bickering and opinions and all. But as an occupational therapist, I am educated and trained to offer therapy in a psychiatric behavioral health kind of an arena. I've spent many years working with children, adolescents, adults, not to mention my own family, in working with in psychiatry, trying to figure things out. And so ball handling skills can also work with that. So I'm kind of spending a lot of time belaboring this point. But the point is, with ball handling skills, there's so many different kinds of things that you can do. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to present just a couple of concepts and then talk about some different things you can do with ball skills and why you would want to do something like that. And what I've also decided and realized is that in the course of these live demos, there's things I want to reference. And so now that I'm developing this catalog of videos, I can reference back to these different kind of concepts. Like last week we talked about hand grasp, and another time I talked about range of motion. And so because I've had that available already, I can now draw on that when I talk about ball handling skills, because I do want to talk about range of motion, and I do want to talk about hand grasps, thusly the segue. So last week I talked about a spherical grasp. And the reason why this is a spherical grasp, and the reason why I mention that and why it's so important is because, and I have a pen right with me, is when we're writing, we need that thumb opposition to come into contact with certainly that second and third finger. And it's a spherical grasp that is so similar that works. I mean, handwriting, holding a pen is even finer than a spherical grasp. But if I want to help somebody, say my goal is handwriting, but the person has weak thumb opposition, if any, one of the ways that I can develop that is by working with a spherical grasp, like this ball. I used this ball last time too, I love this ball. And I'll show you some different kinds of balls that I have. I mean, I like variety, and you'll see. So this not only works on that spherical grasp, but in that spherical grasp, I am also it takes a fair amount of strength to make those bubbles. So it's a fun ball to have to work on the spherical grasp for hand grasp, for strength, for endurance, for stamina, just in playing with the ball. If I were to have a goal of to improve handwriting, and I have a client who has weak muscle tone, and I have them practice writing, how quickly are they going to get tired? And if I keep insisting on them writing, that can engage a power struggle, which could then cause some behavioral problems. So me as an adult saying, you need to do this, and this kid's body is saying, but I can't. And we have no compassion for that. We have some problems. We have some behavior. I think that's a lot of what's going on today. It's like, come on, if we can understand each other better, maybe there would be less, I don't know, struggling with all of it today. And see, I even digress here. So let me just stop with that and show you some of these other balls that I have. The first concept that I want to talk about is grading. And grading is different than on-off. Those of you who know me, I talk about energy a lot. So, and I know that that's kind of, maybe sounds a lot very foo-foo, but to me, a male energy that we all have is a more on-off kind of a switch. And this is somebody in church that taught me this that I thought was brilliant. A man is kind of ready to go. They're either on or off. A woman is very cyclic. It's very gray. We need both of those kinds of energies. We need the very linear, and we need a circular energy. Left brain, very linear, counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, Eric here, if you know. We may have a little discussion about this, but 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very linear. As opposed to like the colors of the spectrum. It's a very right brain, musical oriented, kind of art, beauty, vague. We need both of those principles. We need the right brain and the left brain to work together. We need that on-off to work with the gray. And I think that that's really so much the essence of what's going on today and why people get divorced. We have trouble getting along. You know, how do you fit a round peg into a square hole? Anyway, but the reason why I'm kind of belaboring this point is just to illustrate, first of all, I think it's an important point, but the concept of grading. That when I'm working with a child, or I'm sorry, with a client, because I work with a lot of children, when I work with a client, if I say do this, it's a very male, masculine type of energy, on, off. Do this or not. The chances of a power struggle is incredibly high. Like the mask, the face mask. You know, either wear a mask or don't. I mean, sorry, I keep bringing this stuff in. It's my personal issues coming in today. See if I can just get more on task. Let's talk about grading. It's a gray area. We start with something very small and work our way up, as opposed to do it this way or no other way. And so I have some examples. Something that's very small, something that's a little bit big, to something that's even bigger, and yet bigger yet. Because everybody's different. There's no one size fits all, even though we try. And as an occupational therapist, what I'm trying to do is help improve function of that individual and why they came to me in the first place. I'm offering strategies to reach wholeness. So a little child, depending on what my goal is not going to fit on a large ball. Somebody with a hand grasp who has some limitations, and their range of motion, they can only go about that far, it's going to be pointless if I use a small ball. It's like, for example, eating. Some people have a hard time, for whatever reason, say a stroke, of holding an eating utensil. Sorry, I'm hearing an eagle outside. I just lost my point, I'm sorry. Where was I? Let me backtrack. Oh, that's where it was. So with an eating utensil, say they have a stroke and they really can't hold the regular eating utensil. What we could do is build that handle up to the level where they can grasp, and then they can be independent. So as an OT, we're working on either trying to improve skills or helping somebody to adapt to some limitations that they may have so that they can function better. So grading balls, these different sizes. So that's one concept that I want to share with you. The other concept I wanted to talk about are performance components. And that's when, as an occupational therapist, occupation activity you can break any activity down into skills. Like, for example, me doing this live demo. You know, there's different kinds of skills that I need to have in order to do this kind of thing. So when I'm evaluating a patient who's been referred to me, and I find that there's some problem areas, I look at what's called performance components, and we break them down into different areas, like physical performance components. For example, I need physical performance components as opposed to cognitive performance components versus psychological or psychosocial or emotional components. So I thought what I would do is I would take a couple different balls and talk about some of the different performance components that could be addressed in using that particular ball for those particular issues that my client may be having. So for example, I'm going to bring you guys down so you can see better. Whoops, sorry. There we go. Ha, that fit. So, let's talk about some of the different kinds of things we could do with the ball, this ball, and some of the performance components. So first of all, let's talk about some of the physical skills, physical performance components. Like, for example, the first thing is visual. This is really like, wow, visually. So if I'm working with somebody who's blind, may not be an issue. There's so many different kinds of ways I want to go with this. As I was getting ready, one of the things that came to me that I wanted to mention was visual defensiveness. And this would be like a contraindication, I think, or a cause for caution as far as safety features with balls. Before I go any farther, some people are visually defensive, and I'm going to illustrate this for you, so I'm going to warn you guys. Some people are visually defensive, so if they see a ball coming, it's overwhelming to them visually, like this. Some people, that's too much. And if that's the case, I may or may not want to do balls. But let's assume that this is okay. So there's the visual, there's a sound, there is some texture. With this ball, not too much. I did a video on balance. So again, from a physical performance component, things that we could work on would be supine, being able to maintain a supine position, or any number of positions like sideline or supine. Kneeling, depending. Other performance components that this ball could address would be like muscle tone. So these balls, I love these balls, but I'm finding, I don't think I can, or maybe it's the gymnastic I can't find in the States anymore. Although there's some other variations. So a ball like this is actually kind of tighter than this ball right now. You see how this one kind of is gushy? This one's kind of tight. So the tensileness of the ball, it's not a performance component, but it's a quality of the activity that I would take into consideration depending on the performance components of my client. So this ball is gushy, this ball is solid, but this ball is lighter. So I may or may not want to use this ball depending on, I may not want to, I guess what I'm trying to point out is there's so many different variables in making a choice on what kind of activity I want to do for therapy. And so with balls, there's so many different types of choices. This one, very light, may not want to do it in the house. I hear that eagle outside. What else? So physical performance components would be if I'm working like on strength, like muscle tone, the balance, the vision, eye-hand coordination, eye-foot coordination. A lot of times, one of my favorite activities throughout my career has been throwing these developmental balls to my client and having them either hit it back with their hands or their body or maybe their hip, because that's helping to work on body awareness. But again, there's some safety considerations with that. So be very careful if you choose to do this at home without any further guidance. Whether you can hurt things, you can destroy property. If you hit these big balls with one hand, you certainly could hurt yourself. Let alone the balance issues. It's definitely some safety issues with the balls. So what else? So those are some physical performance components. But there's also some other kinds of performance components like cognitive performance components that if I feel like, based on my evaluation, and I've identified in my treatment plan, and I have goals that is working on cognitive skills, can I use balls to help address the cognitive issues? Maybe. Sequencing, planning, those kinds of things that you can incorporate into a ball handling activity. Building attention span. You know, I'll count how many times I'll throw the ball back and forth. You know, if they can throw it back to me 3 times, you know, we're working on some cognitive skills. Okay, maybe unconsciously, but I know I'm working on them because I'm going to try to build, you know, over time to try to increase that time. I guess I want to take that back. If I was consciously if my client was consciously working on, say, counting 1, 2, 3, and then another session is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm working on cognitive skills. I'm working on academic skills that can be incorporated into a ball handling activity. So I want to stand corrected on that one. There's social, emotional kinds of performance components involved or could be involved in ball handling skills. But I want to backtrack on that. When I'm working with the balls, I could have somebody working on the ball by themselves. Maybe they're that's how I work on the fly. Maybe somebody's dribbling. They can dribble on their own without having to socially engage with anybody else. But one of the things I love about the balls, and why I mentioned the kind of behavioral health, mental health arena, is that with the balls, we can start working on social interaction. And so that's another type of performance component, is social interaction skills. So rolling the ball back and forth, you have to interact with the other person. If you're just dribbling, you don't really have to interact. We can take that a step further and not only do like a one-on-one, or do it individually, but then therapist-client, but then the therapist can also work in a group and do ball skills. And let's just go ahead and take it out even farther on the development, on the continuum, is we do ball skills in group, in group settings. What about competitive sports? You know, ball handling skills, you know. So, physical, cognitive, social, emotional, psychological performance components that we can address with the balls. So, just want to take it a step further about some other kinds of activities that we can do with balls. Again, because I think I'm trying to emphasize the concept of grading. I'm going to put a ring toss in the ball handling skill category. I think I'll just hold these up to you because I don't think you guys can see this too well. So I showed you different sizes of balls. Some other ways to give more variety, in addition to size, would be texture. I don't know how well you guys can see these. And for me, ball handling skills includes things like this. You know, I like to find, you know, the variety, because again, you know, maybe somebody does have a spherical grasp and they can hold this ball, but if I'm working with a little child, they're not going to be able to do this as a spherical grasp, so I may want to pick a different ball for that. Maybe something like this. Maybe they don't have a spherical grasp. Or maybe I'm trying to work on a fine pincer grasp. I may want to use this. So there's lots of different choices. But it's fun, it's creative. Then there's different weights. Like this ball, it actually says medicine ball on it. This is a 4-pound ball. So again, I was talking about performance components like muscle tone, working on strength. I might want to work with a medicine ball to help address that particular performance component. Something else that you'll find OTs use a lot are bean bags. Now, I've had this set for a while. I actually had a parent make these for me. And what they did for me is they made 4 different shapes in 4 different colors with 4 different types of fillings. So we have the texture, we have the vision, we have the cognitive, I'm going to say cognitive performance components, and that's wrong. We have elements that could address different cognitive performance components, like working on the different shapes and colors. So very basically, you can work on so many things. But like matching the different colors, matching the shapes. The fact that the filling is different works on the tactile integration or tactile perception. I had 2 sets made. This is a corduroy fabric. I also had another set made of vinyl because fortunately I do work with a lot of individuals who drool. And so, especially this year of pandemic, of being safe, you know, if people are drooling, then you really don't want to be using fabric. You just have to be really careful with that. So vinyl works. And even these, heaven knows, this is one of my One of my clients calls him Kenny, and he's been all over, even on the roof. This to me also fits in the category of ball handling skills, and you can squeeze it, so it's working on a lot of good, fun, fine motor grasps. But then I wanted to point these items out. So as far as grading, let's say we're working on a target. So instead of having a reciprocal back and forth exchange, I want to work on some other performance components. And so I'm going to put a target somewhere because I want to work on more the visual motor, which is more what this is as opposed to visual perception, but some of that visual perception can fit in here as well. So depending on where my client is at, I may want to have, in the examples I'm giving you right now, this is the smaller target. Let me backtrack. This is the smaller target, then this, maybe something wide like this, or even wider like this. Use the items at home as long as it's okay. You know, the adults say it's okay in your home. Why not? And I think the more that the individual can be involved in making those decisions, it comes from within that client, then I know that they're going to be that much more engaged in the activity. One of the places I have found some really fun things is at the pool supply company stores. You know, I mean, okay, they're made for the pool, but do you have to do it just in the pool? You know, these can be fun. Just to take it one more step further is other things we can do with balls. Now, obviously this is very old, but it are bats. And doing things with the balls. So with a bat, sometimes it's easier to hit it this way. I'm working on bilateral motor coordination. This is much easier. Both sides of the body are doing the same thing, as opposed to hitting a bat with a ball. This is the midline of our body. Holding a bat, you have to cross the midline of your body, and that is a really high-level skill. Sweeping, same kind of a thing. I don't think I want to say anything more about that. So there's so many different choices, so many different varieties. I've kind of gone around and about. But I hope you guys have learned some things. Whether you actually hire an occupational therapist or can take some of these ideas, and depending on where your child or yourself or somebody you're caregiving for, whether you actually want to work on building skills or just play and have some fun, doing things with balls can work on a lot of different kinds of skills, helping us to feel better, working on development, working on academics, a multitude. So I'm here, I'm happy to help. I know as an adult we can get silly with talking about ball handling skills, but I'm serious. It's significant. So I always like to end my presentations with just like a little quiet time or a little calming or a little kind of settling down. So I didn't want to keep it really simple today because I did not really do an activity. I just showed you some different things. But if you all will, let's just do it one time. Take a deep breath in and out, and we'll finish up. So deep breath in. Slowly let it go. So I plan on being back here next Wednesday. I'm looking at talking about visual perception. But then I'm not sure what I'm going to do for September 30th. But I think I would like to get into some of the, how do I want to say, kind of behavioral health, mental health arena. I think with all the anxiety and depression and confusion and whatnot, thinking of maybe, doing an activity, introducing that area. That's what I'm looking at. So, my phone number is area code 631-848-8852, or you can PM me on Facebook, I'm a registered and licensed occupational therapist in the state of Arizona, ready to evaluate and treat. Take good care, everybody. Thank you.